You're a star, Raga. That's what I hear my friends say to me many times. It feels good, of course. After all, when I was growing up, I pictured myself giving autographs in my fantasy world. I even eventually set up a business that helped others become stars in their own way. These may not be the celluloid stars, but the stars that shine through sharing, through storytelling, stars that make you sit up and think, if they can, I can. But why do I no longer have that dream of becoming a star? Let me share. I'm Raga Olga D'silva, and I'm going to talk to you about the new wave that has hit us all: cancel culture. I've been cancelled at different times in my life, but I did not even know that until I started reflecting. Let me share some examples. I was 3 years old. I still remember my mother had left me at the kindergarten gates. It was in the middle of the term and it was my first day. I looked around, you're scared, you're little, I was crying. I remember a little gay girl came up to me and said, shame, shame. Obviously, she was popular even at that age. She looked around at all her friends and she said, she's crying, she's crying. Immediately, all the other kids mocked and laughed at me. No one spoke to me for days. I felt so alone. Perhaps it was my first experience of being cancelled. I remember being 10 years old and I had not completed my English homework that day because my house was fully flooded. And those of you may know I come from a very humble background and I lived in Mumbai those days. And even the street lights, for instance, were not working. So, in case I could go there and do my homework, I went to school the next morning without doing my homework. The teacher made me stand in front of the class, caned me, and then told everyone no one should talk to her until she learns to do her homework. No one spoke to me for days. Again, I was cancelled for not being able to express my truth. Now I remember I'm like 14 years old. As I was walking home from school, a persistent stalker followed me. He would pass extremely crude comments. He would threaten me with rape if I did not speak to him. He would threaten to throw acid on me if I did not respond to his advances. He then wrote me a letter and sent it through a school friend. I read the letter. I still remember feeling extremely frightened. I tore it to bits and I tried to ignore him, of course. My friend who passed on the letter told other friends that I had a boyfriend who wrote love letters to me. She had no idea of the fear I was going through. All my friends gossiped and enjoyed my discomfort. I tried to explain to them that about the real story and my fears around it. None of them seemed to care and seemed to get great joy from inciting others to stop talking to me. I was cancelled for sharing my truth. I was 25 years old, working at a large advertising agency in Mumbai. I had just been married, and the agency had the culture of basically hanging out after work, going pubbing. And I'm not sure how the scene is in advertising these days, but those days the work hours were horrendous. Late nights were quite common. So to hang out with the team after work and go pubbing was really not my thing. I was just newlywed and I had other things I was committed to. My manager took me aside and said I was not a team player because I wasn't hanging out with the team after work. The team members actually stopped sharing things with me. I wasn't included in any of their fun talks or discussions. The doors there were shut on me. I was cancelled for not being able to be a part of their clique. Now I go back a few more years, and I was 31 years old when my mother found a letter I had written to my best friend, which never got posted. In that letter, I had shared my desire to date women. My mother reacted so strongly to that letter and decided that it would be best if I wasn't alive. I don't know if you've read my story where she attempted, to knife me. How could a mother of two separated come out gay, live in this world? What shame and scandal it would cause to the family, she said. And sure enough, it did. The larger Indian community and my family ostracized me, fully. I was cancelled for wanting to live my truth. Now I take you back to 40 years. When I was 40 years old, I was invited, to an event by a diplomat. It was a great evening. I was having a great time. However, during the conversation, someone made an extremely derogatory comment about their time in India. It upset me so much that I turned around and called them out for making that comment. You can guess what happened. I was taken off the invite list forever, whilst that person continued to be in his position. I was again cancelled for speaking the truth. So, why am I sharing all this with you? This is a form of cancel culture that has always existed in our lives. People ostracized others for not conforming to their way of thinking. What I shared earlier are simple examples of our day to day lives and how us regular people get cancelled in our own small world. Let me take you to the cancel culture that has now taken shape in its current form. The definition, let me share, of cancel culture is a modern form of ostracism in which everyone is thrust out of social or professional circles, whether it be online, on social media, or in person. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, cancel culture is defined as a way of behaving in a society or group, especially on social media, in which it is common to completely reject and stop supporting someone basically because they have said or done something that offends you. It is a method by which people can be called out and removed from mainstream culture. They effectively become cancelled. Now, although it may seem like a recent phenomenon, let me tell you, it's an ancient Greek basically practice dating back over 2000 years that saw an individual sent into exile for a decade due to the results of popular vote. The people exerted their democratic power to ensure those they effectively thought threatened the system could be kept in check. So, what is cancel culture? We can call it censorship, we can call it boycott. It is basically, I think, group shaming through social media. It is a good thing, though, to have censorship. I believe in it. Personally, I believe that people should be called out for homophobic, racist, sexist, and such offensive comments. However, that also leaves me with a question on who decides what is offensive and what is not offensive. But now, we're even getting censorship on history. You may have heard this on things that have happened a very, very, very long time ago, and that has helped shaped many of us and the world around us. I'm 50 years old. I grew up on Enid Blyton books. The famous five to date is still my favorite. Now, the woke brigade basically has called out saying Enid Blyton books were racist and xenophobic. Her books have been taken off the shelves of libraries around the world and taken off syllabus in some universities. And yes, they are right. There are some parts that can be seen as racist, but that was a reflection of our society of those times. Yeah. How else can we understand history and what happened during those times if we don't read it just in the way it was? Like someone commented on Twitter, and I quote that: I don't understand why institutions fail to understand. You can't judge history or historical figures by today's standards. You cannot cancel history. Unquote. This has become daily news now. Someone or the other is constantly being cancelled. You remember J.K. Rowling got cancelled, recently for a comment that she made not very long ago. The mobs piled onto her. And how? She still continues to receive death threats simply for expressing her views. Remember there's a furrow over Margaret Atwood's comments. Yet again, the mob has piled onto her. In recent days, the mob had tried to cancel Dave Chappelle for using jokes about trans people on his highly popular Netflix comedy shows. By the way, he earns $50 million per show. Yes, you heard that right. $50 million per show. Will he be cancelled though? Not really. It seems like the really famous people, they're so powerful and are such stars, are harder to cancel. But the mob does try really hard to cancel them. It is people like us, the one in the middle, the influencers, who have a following, who are loved for what they are, they love for their voices, but they're not yet big enough. We're not yet big enough. So these are the people who are constantly analyzed and the mob piles on to them or us, as I can say. Much like we see on social media. You remember Ria Chakravarti? The mob piled onto her, didn't they? And we called it the witch hunt. It's the same mob mentality that we know of in real life. Just imagine you're on the streets of Mumbai or in India. How often have we seen people gathering and hitting someone that they see being hit without really being, knowing their backstory. That's the mob. That mob now is online and they pile on online. We call them trolls often. Mobs from real life have come alive basically online. These are the moral police, as anonymous people who sit behind their keyboards and spew their venom. So, coming back to the present, friends, cancel culture, which has existed forever, has become even more ferocious now. Whilst in the old days we would have to face it from within our, little ecosystem, now we are put in front of a whole new world of trolls and can be shamed publicly. Can you imagine how toxic it is? Can you imagine how much damage it must cause to the mental health of the person being trolled and cancelled? People lose their jobs, they lose their credibility, their reputation, their livelihood for simply expressing their beliefs. I find it extremely scary. Suddenly, our freedom of expression, our freedom to think has come under a microscope. It seems that no longer can we express our thoughts and opinions freely. Why? Simply because our opinions may not conform to others' way of thinking. The woke brigade has arrived, dressed up in a cloak made of so called liberal moral policing. Interesting, isn't it? And now anyone can be cancelled. Let me say, do I fear being cancelled? Of course I do. Because I'm not a star. I'm a regular voice, but an influential voice. I have a voice in the LGBTQ community, as you know. I fight for our rights. As a successful entrepreneur, I also encourage women to be independent and mentor many to take up jobs, become independent, become entrepreneurs, and follow their dreams. I have an unconventional approach to life that may offend some. I am a storyteller. I share my thoughts through stories, whether it is through my YouTube channel or through my books or through the movie content that I write. It also means that I have to be constantly aware of what I'm saying and how I'm saying it, particularly when I'm asked awkward questions. I get asked quite simple things, like they say, "You're a lesbian. How come you get period?" I get told you're a lesbian. Like, are the children biologically yours? Or are they your partners? Or have you adopted them? And it makes me think. All I want to say to them, I'm a woman. I want to shout out and say, I'm a woman. I'm a biological woman. But I stop myself saying this. What if it offends someone? What if this cancels me? A reputation I have built over decades gets tarnished. I get asked by very senior people in the corporate space, on whether I need for example, a special toilet as a lesbian. They get so confused between sexuality and gender. I am a lesbian, yes, but I'm still a woman. Why would I need a special toilet? This reminds me of that night when I come back to that story when my mother was in full rage over that letter that I talked about. She repeatedly said, "So now, should I call you an uncle?" I couldn't understand it for years. But when such questions get asked to me that I shared earlier, now I understand what she meant. In her limited access to lived experiences, she thought when I was coming out gay, I would be a hijra. There's so much awareness that is needed, so much correction that is needed. But are we ready for honest conversations and opinions? There are mobs waiting to pounce upon anyone who they think are offending them personally, and then the hate game starts. The trolling starts. The threats start. Do I have an appetite for it? What do you think? I'm known for my one liners and saying things the way they are. But this new woke world, gosh, has left me very fearful. Not just for me, but for my family. Because if I did express freely, then perhaps you would cancel me if I said something that I believed in, but you did not. My life and that of my family could be under threat. Maybe my being gay offends you, and how I communicate that offends you even more. Perhaps my coming out at 50 offends you. Perhaps my being divorced offends you. Perhaps me being in a same sex relationship for 15 years offends you. Perhaps that I proposed to my partner and want to marry her offends you. And then when I express such opinions, thoughts, and beliefs, I may get cancelled, right? I do worry about the next generation. I worry about you. This woke culture, this cancel culture seems to be taking away your freedom to have your own point of view. It's dictating to you what you should be saying, what you should be reading, and who you should listen to. Wow. I personally know of many young people like you who say to me, I'm better off keeping my mouth shut. I would rather not express my opinion. But you are the ones that should be expressing new ideas, new narratives to change the narrative that we've been stuck in, whether it is patriarchy, LGBT, social reforms. If your voice is shut, who will take us forward? You're the future leader at workplaces. The workplaces in India have started the DE and I dialogues initiatives and are slowly putting things in place and structure and bringing in change. As future leaders, your voice is so important for us to have inclusive and a diverse workforce. Change happens when we collectively raise issues, have dialogues and diverse opinions, and freedom to express such opinions. Each time, I've been asked to speak at business schools and universities, particularly in India, I return with tears of joy. Apart from the love and respect I receive for my story and my journey, I also hear the youth talk about change. I also hear the youth talk about being that change. And I see it in the way, the way you all speak and how you communicate. Please don't let your voice dim. And please don't be a part of the mob that dims other people's voices. Critical thinking and robust discussions is how the world will move forward. I personally woke up from that fantasy of wanting to become a star. I no longer want to become a star. I'm happy to be just me. I need your support, your strength, and your trust in me to continue to be that voice on behalf of many of us. And let us change this narrative together. I know you will not cancel me. Thank you.